that go into the making of these weapons. These weapons can't be made without specific components which are tied to the ability to access the rare earth minerals out of China. China's denying us access to that. So we can't even make them. Even if the money was there, we can't make these. We don't have the ability to make these. All the things we fired, most of them didn't work, ladies and gentlemen. Most of them were jammed. Most of them were spoofed. And the ones that didn't, they hit buildings that were empty. We had zero impact on Iran in terms of bombing. We are in a hole that we cannot dig ourselves out of. And Iran does get to dictate because, after all, they didn't lose the war. We did.
The US military ran out of missiles, and the consensus is it can't restock until 2030. Scott Ritter just added something that makes that problem permanent. Even if Congress writes the check, even if Lockheed Martin triples production, even if every factory in America runs 24 hours a day, there's a physical ingredient missing that China just cut off. And Iran already has the blueprints to everything we fired anyway.
These weapons can't be made without specific components which are tied to the ability to access the rare earth minerals out of China. China's denying us access to that. So we can't even make them. Even if the money was there, we can't make these. We don't have the ability to make these.
And while we're trying to rebuild a depleted arsenal, we can no longer manufacture. Iran spent the last 2 decades studying every weapon we used.
The Iranians have been preparing for over 2 decades to stand up to it. None of this took Iran by surprise. Not a damn thing we did take them by surprise, except the timing of a surprise attack that was, shielded by an act of perfidy that,
This is the part of the story that closes the loop on everything. Let's look at that board. Let's start with what happened overnight and Ritter's structural diagnosis of why it keeps happening.
The United States' agreement incapable. I don't think there's going to be an agreement, a ceasefire agreement, a formalized agreement, especially one that can pass muster in the United States Senate or become a Security Council resolution. Of course, that's the goal, that's the objective, but the United States' agreement incapable. Even if we come up with an understanding, the United States has deadlines. For instance, things have to happen at this point, and between now and then, Donald Trump will change his mind and seek to renegotiate, because Donald Trump is not in the, he's not interested in an agreement or a treaty. He is interested in the deal, and the deal is a completely different thing. A deal is, a one-way street. A deal is what's good for Donald Trump. A deal is something that can be broken at any time because it becomes a bad deal, and then you have to replace it with a good deal. He can seem to have a deal, but then he finds out after talking to people it's really a bad deal, so he reneges on it. It has to be very frustrating to be negotiating with the United States at this point in time because we can't be consistent in anything. The Iranians have been very consistent from the get-go on what their demands are, what the requirements are. And Iran does get to dictate because, after all, they didn't lose the war. We did. So that's where we're at. What's going to happen? Hard to say. I don't see an outbreak of full-scale conflict. The United States can't and survive. Economically, already we're in dire straits. Iran will collect its tolls. I know Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, just sent out a warning to both Oman and Iran that this will not be tolerated. But I don't think Oman and Iran really care what Scott Bessent thinks or the United States Treasury thinks. The bottom line is Iran has a death grip on the transit of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, and nothing the United States says, does, wishes, desires is going to change that. The only thing that will change that is the United States adhering to, an agreement which it's incapable of entering into. So,
CENTCOM confirmed at 10:17 p.m. Eastern Time on May 27th, Iran launched a ballistic missile towards Kuwait that was successfully intercepted by Kuwaiti forces. CENTCOM called it an egregious ceasefire violation. Iran's account, they were responding to prior U.S. strikes on a drone control facility in Bandar Abbas. Both sides claimed self-defense simultaneously. This is the pattern Ritter is describing. Every time negotiations approach a visible milestone, a kinetic exchange follows within 48 hours. The deal is not blocked by technical disagreements over enrichment levels or Hormuz fees. It is blocked by an asymmetry of institutional capability. Iran negotiates consistently and holds its positions. The US changes its positions between press conferences. Welcome back to ARM Geopolitics. I'm Aaron Johnson. On this channel, we don't just cover the news. We cut through the noise, dominate the narrative, and give you the analysis mainstream media is too scared to run. Vigilance is our shield. Truth is our weapon. Let's get into it. The operational level evidence that the US military is already beyond its financial limits, not in projections, but in decisions made last week.
We've run out of operational funds. So a heavy brigade of armor out of Texas that was supposed to rotate into Poland as part of the rotational force was stopped. PTAG says stopped it. We don't have the money to send them. Donald Trump then came out with a statement that said we're going to send 5,000 troops from Germany. Congress said, really? On whose budget? And who approved this? Poland is going, really? We didn't sign a status of forces agreement. There is no treaty relationship that allows this. Trump lives in his own fantasy world, which is half the problem. But the reality is we have an unsustainable force posture. We can't afford to do a major escalation because it'll end up very badly for us and our allies. And Trump can't accept the terms that are being dictated by Iran. And so we're going to have this never, soft ceasefire for some time, for the foreseeable future. If you put that form up, we should look at it more carefully because you see estimated use in the Iran war, probably higher numbers than that, but that's the estimated use. And you take a look at deliveries in 2026, that's reality. So every one of those, they used 1,000 Tomahawks, only 207 are going to be replaced in this year. THAAD, 190 to 290, probably the higher number. Only 92 are going to be replaced. You see what happened? We have a deficit we cannot dig ourselves out of. Do not look at the fiscal year 2027 request because that is not real. No money has been allocated, and therefore no production capacity has been expanded. That's all fake numbers. It hasn't been approved by Congress, and we don't know if the industries, this is based upon the framework agreement goal. This is a bunch of guys getting together and just basically spewing out what we want to do. That's not real. And we live in the real world today. Today is about reality. We have run out of ammunition. We don't have any. We cannot fight a war. This is the reality. And this is the reality that's going to exist for several years because look at Tomahawk, 2030, 2031. I mean, I'm not good at math, but it's 2026. That tells me 4 or 5 years from now.
Ritter is separating what has been allocated from what has been wished. The CSIS report filed May 27th confirms the reality. Tomahawk procurement ran roughly 87 per year in the decade before this war. The Iran campaign fired more than 1,000. At pre-war procurement rates, restocking to pre-war levels lands in 2030, 2031. The FY 2027 budget request projects significantly higher numbers. But Ritter's point is structurally correct. Those projections require congressional appropriation, factory floor expansion, and supply chain capacity that does not exist currently. The Texas Brigade detail is operational proof. The Pentagon told the unit to stand down, not in a planning document, in a deployment order. And now, the argument that turns a recoverable inventory problem into something structural, the physical ingredient China controls that every US precision weapon requires.
It's probably classified the amount of, permanent magnets and other, rare earth, materials that go into the making of these weapons. These weapons can't be made without specific components which are tied to the ability to access the rare earth minerals out of China. China's denying us access to that. So we can't even make them. Even if the money was there, we can't make these. We don't have the ability to make these. This is the fatal flaw of the approach the United States has taken to warfighting since the end of the Cold War, where we basically don't waste them for bombs. Magnets are cool. Don't waste them. I don't know. I'm not going to get into it, but, guidance and control. What do you think makes the bomb hit its target? It's not just a bomb. They put guidance on it. What's in the guidance? What makes the little chips do the little chip things? So, sorry, I shouldn't read comments. But sometimes ignorance is bliss. The point is, we programmed ourselves to fight wars where we would intimidate people with technology. That the idea was to make anybody understand that if you fought us, we would overwhelm you with technology. We would come in with Generation 5 fighters that you couldn't touch. We have interceptors that shoot anything down you shoot at. We have long-range standoff weapons that make us immune to your air defense, but we can kill everything. And we'll come in and we'll hit you hard for a week, and you'll be destroyed and surrender because you can't stand up to it. And the Iranians have been preparing for over 2 decades to stand up to it.
Ritter names the mechanism without specifying which minerals. Here are the specifics. China controls approximately 85% of global rare earth mining and 90 to 95% of processing. The elements critical to US precision weapons: neodymium for permanent magnets in missile guidance motors, dysprosium and terbium for heat-resistant magnets in fighter jets, samarium for targeting systems. Pentagon data confirmed most advanced US systems, F-35 jets, Tomahawk missiles, naval sonar arrays, radar platforms, rely on Chinese processed rare earth elements. China pulled the trigger on April 4th, 2025, before this war started. Export controls on 7 heavy rare earth elements. December 1st, 2025, any company with military affiliation denied export licenses by name. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and 14 other major US defense contractors added to China's export control blacklist. CSIS confirmed in October 2025. Starting December 1st, 2025, companies with affiliation to foreign militaries, including those of the United States, will be largely denied export licenses. The US currently stockpiles enough rare earth materials for months of consumption. Domestic processing capacity, years away to build. The America First framing, 30 years of offshoring military supply chains to a country we are now in direct strategic competition with, created a physical dependency baked into the guidance chip of every precision weapon in the US arsenal. Money does not solve this. Factory floor expansion does not solve this. The minerals are not here. The final layer of why this depletion is so difficult to escape. Iran isn't just waiting for the US to run out. They spent 20 years on a weapons intelligence program that started with what landed in their fields.
The Iranians have watched us fight forever. To show you how good they are, we had something called the Beast of Kandahar. I think RQ-76 or something of that nature. Giant Delta Wing B-2 bomber-looking drone. And this thing would fly. It got famous during the raid on Abbottabad. The assassination of a 57-year-old diabetic, with kidney failure, Osama bin Laden. So it's the system that flew over Pakistan, filming the raid that the President of the United States and those were watching. And the Beast of Kandahar flies over Iran as well, sort of immune. It's so high, stealth features, fly over, take pictures, and all this stuff. And the Iranians sat there and watched it. They had a technical team off the runway in Kandahar every day, watching it take off, collecting the signals, you see, because there's a controller taking it off. Off it goes, flying, yay, gets to altitude, and then the controller turns it over to another controller operating out of, Nevada. And there's a handshake that goes on. You click it, there's a handshake. The drone talks to the controller, and they go beep, and then they shake hands, and they sync up their secure comms link, and he has control, and now he's flying it. And the Iranians are going, thank you, play that handshake again, play it again. Then they send it back to their smart boys who break it apart. They go, we got this handshake. And so the Kandahar takes off. They de-link it. It goes to a handshake, and the Iranians come and go, we're shaking hands, took it over and flew it back to Iran and took it. Do you guys understand how hard that is? How hard that was to accomplish? But the Iranians did it because they understand everything about what we're doing. There's nothing we do that takes them by surprise. Not a damn thing we did take them by surprise, except the timing of a surprise attack that was, shielded by an act of perfidy that, hey, we're going to negotiate with you. We got a deal on our way to Washington, D.C. for finalization. Everybody sleep tight. Boom, you're dead. Bomb. That's how we operate. We lie, we cheat, we steal. We don't operate honestly at all. And we still got our asses handed to us because they're better than we are. They understood us better than we understood them. We went in there thinking we could kill Ayatollah Khamenei and collapse the regime and intimidate the crap out of everybody because we got F-35s, we got B-2s, we got everything. We're America. We're the best. And then we ran out of ammunition. And you know what? That ammunition didn't work. All those GBU-57s, the big bomb that we drop in and makes it go boom, at least 4 of them didn't go off. Guess who has them today? Not just the Iranians, the Russians and the Chinese, who are reverse engineering them as we speak. Every single weapon we fired, most of them don't work. The Tomahawks, 2017, we fired a bunch of Tomahawk Block 4s at Syria. You remember that? Striking the so-called Syrian chemical weapons facilities that weren't chemical weapons facilities. Again, another failure in intelligence. We fired, I forget what it was, 61 of them. 23 didn't work. 23 ended up in the fields of Syria there, intact. And guess who captured them? The Syrians. And guess who they're friendly with? The Russians. And guess who the Russians are friendly with? The Iranians. Guess who has total understanding of the Tomahawk Block 4, every aspect of it. So it could be jammed, spoofed, whatever. The Iranians do. All the things we fired. Most of them didn't work, ladies and gentlemen. Most of them were jammed. Most of them were spoofed. And the ones that didn't, they hit buildings that were empty. We had zero impact on Iran in terms of bombing things. We had zero impact. Well, we might have had like a little bit of impact, but the overall effect is nothing. No impact on their ballistic missile production capability because it had all been removed from the above ground facilities to underground facilities that we couldn't reach.
2 claims here that need precise sourcing because the underlying argument is strong, but the specific numbers need context. The RQ-170 capture in December 2011 is documented. The drone landed near Kashmir in northeastern Iran. An Iranian electronic warfare engineer speaking to the Christian Science Monitor on condition of anonymity described GPS spoofing. They jammed the encrypted military GPS signal and then forced the drone to fall back to a less secure civilian frequency. Then fed it false coordinates, making it land in Iran while believing it was landing at its home base in Afghanistan. The Aviationist published the full technical breakdown. The drone appeared on Iranian state television, intact. US official called it ludicrous, but never recovered it. Ritter's handshake description is his elaborated account of the same event. The GPS spoofing mechanism is the documented version. The Syria 2017 Tomahawks. Ritter says 61. The confirmed number is 59. CENTCOM stated 57 of 59 hit their targets. ImageStat International, an independent satellite analysis firm, assessed 58 of 59 reached their targets. The Russian military's claim that 23 of 59 reached the basis, the origin of Ritter's 23 didn't work figure. That Russian figure is not independently confirmed. The Russian military claimed 23 failed. And if they captured any intact, the reverse engineering question follows. The core argument about Iranian intelligence gathering over 20 years is structurally sound, regardless of the exact Syria count. On our final block, what happened to the sanctions regime at the Strait of Hormuz and why Ritter's agreement incapable diagnosis applies to financial policy too.
Treasury Department is sanctioning the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, accusing Iran of using the entity to, shocker, generate revenue from vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz.
Any country or ship or whatever that goes through and pays the toll will be subject to secondary sanctions. So that's the goal, is to get people to say no. Except, gosh, Scott, you haven't really thought this one out, have you? Because they say no, then the oil doesn't flow, and then they die. My understanding is that they're no longer paying in dollars, and the dollars are no longer going to the banks in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. That's the way Iran used to work until the United States went in and seized those assets, $12 billion worth. So now you're paying in yuan, Chinese currency, going into banks the United States doesn't control, or I think that one of the things I've heard is cryptocurrency. That they're collecting tolls in cryptocurrency. Again, the U.S. has zero control over that. Once said a few honest things he said when he was talking about Brazil, and Brazil was talking about de-dollarization and working with BRICS to come up with alternative means. And he said we can't allow this to happen. If Brazil no longer pays in the dollar, we can no longer sanction them. And if we can't sanction them, we can't control them. And that changes what most honest thing anybody's ever said. Because the whole concept of the dollar and everything isn't about, the smooth economic flow. It's about American control, American ability to squeeze, your throat through sanctions. The world is waking up to the fact that there is a limit to American economic power. Russia proved it. China's proved it. Look, the Chinese were threatened. You can't buy. Scott Bessent again. He should learn to shut up. China, your private oil refineries, no Russian oil is allowed to go in there. If they go in there, we're going to sanction you. The Chinese government went, yeah, disregard. Do the Russian oil. If you sanction us, we'll crush you. And Trump already knows. Last time he tried to over-sanction China, China crushed him, squeezed him to death, made him surrender. This is the reality of it. This is a humiliating moment for the United States because one of the greatest economic weapons that we've had, which we've abused over the course of several decades, is now being exposed as literally an empty threat. Scott Bessent isn't going to sanction anybody. You think Iran is afraid of sanctions? Not at all. They've survived under stringent sanctions. And Iran owns us right now because I can guarantee you, if given the choice of being hit with secondary American sanctions or paying the tariff, people are paying the tariff because they need that oil more than they need the blessing of Scott Bessent.
The PGSA sanctions were announced May 27th, the same day as this conversation. The Treasury Department designated the Persian Gulf Strait Authority under Executive Order 13224, the same framework used to target terrorist financing. OFAC statements, anyone cooperating with the PGSA may be sanctioned for supporting IRGC-linked maritime extortion. Ritter's structural analysis of why this doesn't work, the payments have already migrated outside US-controlled financial infrastructure. The seizure of $12 billion in Iranian funds held in UAE-based dollar accounts occurred in 2023 and was the specific event that triggered Iran's shift to yuan-denominated transactions. The channel no longer runs through Abu Dhabi or Dubai. It runs through Chinese banks. The US has no jurisdiction over Chinese yuan clearing. Cryptocurrency adds a second channel entirely outside the banking system. The Rubio Brazil quote Ritter references is from a 2023 Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing, documented in C-SPAN archives. Rubio's logic is exactly as Ritter summarizes. Secondary sanctions only work when transactions pass through dollar-denominated clearing. The moment an economy conducts trade outside the dollar, the mechanism breaks. Iran demonstrated this is operationally possible. Hormuz transit fees are the most strategically significant test of dollar-based sanctions ever conducted. And the early evidence is that yuan and crypto routes are absorbing the traffic. I want you to sit with something for a second. The weapons that were supposed to destroy Iran's military, most of them either didn't work, hit empty buildings, or are currently sitting in an Iranian intelligence facility being reverse engineered. The ones that did land, the underground bunkers absorbed them. The program moved on. And here is the part that should make your stomach drop. We want to restock. We need to restock. But the minerals that go into every single guidance chip, every Patriot, every Tomahawk, every JSSM, those minerals come from China. And China turned off the tap on December 1st, 2025. Lockheed Martin and Raytheon are literally on Beijing's export blacklist by name. Not hypothetically, by name. So think about what that actually means. You cannot triple production if you cannot source the ingredients. You cannot write a check big enough to fix a physical supply chain that runs through an adversary who just weaponized it. This is not a budget problem. This is not a procurement problem. This is an existential vulnerability that 30 years of outsourcing military supply chains built directly into the foundation of American war fighting. While Washington is running around trying to sanction a payment authority that Iran already migrated to yuan and crypto, Iran is rebuilding its underground missile infrastructure. Hezbollah is training on drones you cannot jam. And the US military is telling a Texas armored brigade, sorry, no money. You're not rotating to Poland. And the people who made all of these decisions, who offshored the rare earth supply chains, who designed precision weapons with zero domestic mineral sourcing, who launched a war without a plan for what happens after week 5. They are still the people on television telling you America is winning. Scott Ritter just told you the bill. It's a lot bigger than anyone in Washington is admitting. Now here's the thing. Ritter lays out this rare earth dependency and it almost feels too big to solve. And maybe that's why nobody in the mainstream media is touching it. If you acknowledge the problem, you have to acknowledge 30 years of decisions that created it. You have to name names. You have to ask who got rich while American defense contractors handed their supply chains to Beijing. But the question has to be asked. What is the real America First answer here? Not build more factories. That takes a decade. Not sanction China. They sanction us back harder. What is the actual move that protects American security and American families right now? While the gap between what we fired and what we can rebuild is measured in years. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Genuinely. Because I have been in this material for weeks and I'm not sure I have a clean answer. And I want to see if this community does. And if this is the kind of analysis you think people need to hear, instead of the cable news version of events, share it with somebody. That's the only thing that will help us beat the algorithm. I'll see you down there. This is ARM Geopolitics. I'm Aaron Johnson. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never stop questioning. I'll see you in the next one.